You are looking at Yankee Stadium in the Bronx, and many of you will be watching the Yankees in the first place Oakland A's if the rain stays away. It's been sprinkling throughout the day here in New York, while some of you will be looking in at Wrigley Field in Chicago for a meeting of the National League leaders, the Reds and the Cubs. Good matchup. Jose Rijo going against Rick Sutcliffe. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Marv Albert, and welcome to the start of our baseball day here on NBC. Coming up on the pregame show, follow-up on the Mark Langston trade. Have the Expos, in effect, rented a pitcher for the rest of the season? Plus a talk with Cincinnati Reds owner Marge Schott, someone who always seems to stir things up. But first, a look at last night's games of note, and it was a night of superb pitching highlighted by two one-hitters. Chuck Finley of the Angels did it against Boston, even striking out Wade Boggs twice as the Angels beat Roger Clemens of the Red Sox 5-0. The only hit, Jody Reed, with 2 out of the 8th, came up with his Blute single, the last no-hitter at Fenway 24 years ago. At Yankee Stadium, Oakland's Todd Burns, in his first start of the season, allowed only this infield single by Ricky Henderson over 6 2/3. Finished with a combined one-hitter. The Yanks sent the minimum 27 batters to the plate. The Western leading A's over the Yanks 4-0. It was Jeff Ballard of the Orioles extending his record to 8-1 as the Birds won their 4th straight by beating Cleveland 5-2. The Orioles in first in the weak AL East. In Los Angeles last night, Orel Hershiser pounded by the Mets. Howard Johnson with his 10th of the season, contributing to the Mets' 8-2 victory over the Dodgers, the slumping Mets breaking out. And Bryn Smith of the Expos blanked the Padres 5-0. Montreal's pitching on fire. This their 3rd straight shutout. They have not allowed a run in 28 consecutive innings. And now, add to the mix Mark Langston, one of the game's best pitchers who, following constant trade rumors, was finally dealt by Seattle to Montreal late on Thursday night. He joined his new team, the Expos, last night in San Diego. Langston, who will be a free agent at the end of the season, it turned down a last-minute 3-year, $7 million offer by Seattle and was not happy about the way the Mariners treated him.
I'm really very disappointed in the Seattle Mariners at the way that the whole situation was handled. I feel that they're using me as an scapegoat, and I didn't feel that was a sincere offer, the offer that they made to me, because I had no other offers up until the 4th inning of last night's ball game. And to try to negotiate a contract in the middle of a game, the day before I pitch a game, is completely ridiculous, and I'm very disappointed in the way that whole situation was handled.
So now the question is, can the Expos sign him, or have they, in effect, rented a pitcher for the season to go all out for the National League East? Well, we're joined by Dave Dombrowski, Montreal's Vice President of Player Personnel. Dave is at our San Diego affiliate, KNSD. Dave, Mark Langston has made it clear that he wants to sign with a team in a major media city. The leading candidates appear to be the Dodgers and the Mets. Why do you feel you can sign him?
Marv, he's also indicated that he'd like to play for a winning ball club, and we feel that we can provide that type of situation for him. Also, we think that once he gets into the organization, joins us, sees the city of Montreal, meets our players, which is a fine group of individuals, or a close-knit group, which is also important to Mark because he's a close family man, we think he'll like the organization and decide to stay on.
Now, with all the quality names that surfaced in trade reports involving Langston, the stunner was that you were able to make the trade, giving up Randy Johnson, Brian Holman, and Gene Harris, 3 untested pitchers. How do you figure Seattle's point of view in making the trade?
Seattle all along, I think even in the wintertime, it indicated they were looking for some young pitching. These 3 pitchers happen to be unknown pitchers at this time, but in the future, I think people will recognize their names easily. And it's just a situation that Seattle's looking more for the future. These are young, good arms, probably a 3-fine group that you could find anywhere in baseball, and that's why Seattle went ahead and made the move.
Now, Langston had given the Mariners a list of teams that he would like to be traded to, and the Expos were not on that list. Is that discouraging to you?
Not really. When you look at the fact that Mark, pitching in the American League, has never been to Montreal before, it's an unknown situation for him. We feel that once he comes up there, he'll like it. Again, he's a good family man. Our organization is based upon that. And when you're dealing with the unknown, a lot of times the players will indicate, well, I'd rather play in the warm weather climates, the major markets. But the city of Montreal offers a lot. It's a great city. We have good fans and a winning ball club.
Was the deal made to prevent the New York Mets from getting him?
No, by no means. I mean, it helps that he doesn't go to another club in our division, but it was made for the Montreal Expos to win our division in 1989.
All right, Dave, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you, Marv.
All right, Dave Dombrowski, the Vice President, Player Personnel of the Montreal Expos, and Mark Langston will make his Montreal debut tomorrow against the Padres. One other baseball item. Milwaukee rookie shortstop Gary Sheffield, claiming that he has been treated unfairly by the Brewers, says he wants to be traded if things don't change. Sheffield says he wants to be treated with respect. He is especially frustrated with Milwaukee's pitching staff, which he says has not defended him when he's been knocked down by opposing pitchers this season. He says only 2 or 3 pitchers have helped out. He says the rest have been girls. They won't throw at anybody if you paid them. That from Gary Sheffield of Milwaukee. When we come back, a talk with Cincinnati owner Marge Schott, who when last seen was scrambling for a foul ball that led to an interference call against her Reds.
NBC Sports presents Major League Baseball, an inside look. Brought to you by Armor All Car Wax, because we're crazy about cars too. And by Honda Power Equipment, makers of the first lawnmower good enough to be a Honda.
The Cincinnati Reds this season concerning Pete Rose and his alleged gambling involvement. The Cincinnati Reds are playing excellent baseball. With yesterday's 10-8 victory over the Cubs, the Reds have won 4 in a row. They lead the West by 2.5 over the Giants. Rob Dibble, back from a 2-day suspension for throwing a bat, pitched 2 perfect innings to get the win. So the Reds are on a roll, to the delight of their owner, Marge Schott. And Marge has joined us from WLWT, our NBC affiliate in Cincinnati. Marge, in light of all the attention on Pete Rose, are you surprised that things have gone so well? Did you expect the worst?
No, not really. I have a favorite saying, when the going gets tough, the tough get going, and my team is tough.
All right, Marge, this past Wednesday night, Tony Pena of St. Louis hit a pop foul in the direction, as it turned out, in the direction of your first-row box seat. Now, a young man, a guest of yours, sitting alongside you, and you try to catch the ball. He made the catch. You seem to be upset, but in doing so, in making the catch, he interfered with the play, resulting in Eric Davis of your ball club being called out. Now, I've heard of an owner getting into the game, but, Marge, that may have been stretching it a little bit.
Well, it's not my month, I think, you know. The ball went up, and I'm looking up, it's coming down to me, and, you know, when a ball comes towards you, you really don't think of anything, and thank goodness I didn't catch it myself. But this boy had his glove, and I didn't even realize what had happened because I didn't know that there was a reaching over anything. He really didn't go over that far, and whether the catcher could have caught it or not, and I'm just standing there thinking, what is this, you know, and all of a sudden it dawned on me. And one of the announcers, I was patting him on the back. I wasn't. I was giving him playful smacks, you bad boy, you know. but, you know, it just isn't my month, right?
Were you upset
But
more?
we won anyway.
Marge, were you upset more about not catching the ball or the interference call?
Well, I wouldn't have mind catching the ball, but, you know, you do get excited when the ball's coming towards you and you don't really know where it's going to land. But I don't think any of us realized that it had been caught outside the railing, you know, because the boy didn't lean over that much or anything. And he felt terrible. His dad called yesterday and apologized, and I said, hey, those things happen.
All right, several weeks back, with uncertainty continuing regarding Pete Rose's status, you were asked about the possibility of one of your coaches taking over for Pete if he were suspended, and you were quoted as saying, to be frank, I don't think we have any coaches who could handle a top leadership job. Now, your coaching staff includes the likes of Dave Bristol and Tommy Helms and Tony Perez, Lee May. How did they react to your statement?
Well, I've been put in front of the bus by misquotes so much that it really makes me feel bad, and I felt very bad about that because I respect my coaches. In fact, I called them all. I talked to their wives. I always talk to the wives. And I had them up in my office and told them that, you know, again, I've been put in front of the bus, and I do respect them. And my goodness, Tony Perez, he's been with us for years, and Lee Mays is a wonderful guy, and their wives are wonderful people, and I just felt very bad about it. But again, as I say, I've been put in front of the bus so many times, what's new, you know?
Marge, I'm told you're not talking to the Cincinnati media right now. Why is that?
Well, it's not that I'm not talking to them. It's just that, you know, it seems like all we want to do is sensationalism. We're not, you know, concentrating on baseball anymore. It's, you know, And I just don't like to be misquoted or when people take things out of context. I like true press, and so I just, there's nothing to talk about, really.
So
if you
you
just want
felt-
to talk about bad things, I want to talk about good things, upbeat.
What is your reaction to the ongoing Pete Rose situation? What is your sense of what will eventually happen?
Well, it's really the commissioner's office. The Reds have nothing to do with this. It's been a very difficult, is it 3 months or 4 months, seems to be 10 years. It's a very difficult time, I know, for Pete, for myself and the team. But we're just overcoming it and surging forward. I think everybody's pulling together to say, hey, we're going to show everybody what we can do here.
All right, Marge, thank you very much for joining us on the pregame.
Okay, nice being here.
All right, Marge Schott, the owner of the Cincinnati Reds, will be back in a moment.
Hi, I'm Chris Elliott, and this is my dad, Bob. You know, when I think of baseball, I think of the 1959 World Series, and I believe it was the Cardinals and the Knicks that were playing back then, and that famous triple play by the second baseman, I hope I'm pronouncing his name right, it was Bill Wham-Blam, I think. He later became Mr. Coffee.
Chris, I think you're confused. The play you're referring to took place in the 1920 World Series. It was between the Brooklyn Dodgers and the Cleveland Indians, and Joe DiMaggio is Mr. Coffee.
Dad, don't you have to go to the tobacco store or
No,
something?
I don't smoke.
Anyway, Willie Shoemaker's up to bat. He hits a line drive straight to Wham-Blam. Wham-Blam gets the beanbag. He throws it to Phil Rizzuto, who's at home platter. And
Chris, why don't you tell him the truth? Tell him that you never played or watched a game of baseball in your entire life. You used to skip gym class, you'd sleep till noon, watch TV, and then go to McDonald's for a bunch of Big Macs.
No, I guess you're right, but Mark said I could keep his sports jacket if I wasted 30 seconds on his pregame show.
I see.
Hey, is McDonald's still running that Monopoly game?
Yeah, I think so.
I need Boardwalk.
Yeah. Where's Costas' office? I'd like to see that.
Okay, that's down the hall here.
Yes, Chris Elliott and his dad, Bob, from Bob and Ray fame. From one father-son combination to another as we look back at our news of the week. And it was Ken Griffey, senior of the Reds, who had himself an adventure, crawling his way back to first to elude the pickoff attempt. Ken showing his dexterity in avoiding the pickoff. Meanwhile, Ken Griffey, Jr. of Seattle, came up with the catch of the week, going to the wall at Fenway, a magnificent play. Ken was shaken up, suffering a bruised neck, but was back in the lineup the next day. The injury play, Kirk Gibson came off the disabled list, got right to it against the Phils on Wednesday's tie-breaking home run in the fourth, led the Dodgers over the Phillies. For Tiger pitcher Jack Morris, the problems continue. His record dropped to 2-7, and because of soreness in his right elbow, he was placed on the disabled list. A nightmarish season for one of the game's standouts. Lee Guterman of the Yankees extended a scoreless inning streak to 30 2/3 before the Angels put an end to it, but that's the most scoreless innings ever at the start of a season by a relief pitcher. The best pitching of the week. On Wednesday, rookie Tom Flash Gordon of Kansas City picked up his first major league save by striking out. The last 5 Texas Rangers he faced, 6 of the last 7 went down swinging. Most unique pitch of the week, Mike Maddox of the Phils with a wind-up the pitch. A fine-looking balk by Mike Maddox. And that is it for the pregame show. Many of you will see the A's and the Yankees from Yankee Stadium. Vince Scully and Tom Seaver, who are hoping that the weather clears up. It has been raining at the stadium throughout the day. Some of you will see the Cubs and the Reds from Chicago, where the weather, we're told, is good. Bob Costas and Tony Kubek at the mic. We'll have updates, of course, during the afternoon. I'm Marv Albert in New York. Now, let's go to the ballpark.
Such is the case with the Cincinnati Reds. They lost their center fielder and cleanup hitter Eric Davis for a stretch with a hamstring injury, but he's back now. In the case of Cal Daniels, it'll be at least until early July before he fully recovers from a knee injury. They're without one of the game's best young hitters in left field. But despite that fact, 44 games into the season, Pete Rose's club leads in the National League West. Don Zimmer's Cubs have been hit even harder. They were without their starting catcher Damon Berryhill on opening day. He's since returned, and Girardi has been sent back to Iowa. In the meantime, the entire starting outfield has been wiped out. Andre Dawson gone for at least another couple of weeks. Rookie Jerome Walton will be back in 5 or 6 days. Mitch Webster won't be seen this weekend, but could be reactivated by Monday. Despite all those losses, the surprising Cubs occupy first in the East, a half-game edge over the favored Mets, with the Cardinals a game and a half behind. It's the Cubs and the Reds on a beautiful Saturday afternoon from Wrigley Field, coming up next on the NBC Game of the Week.
The National Broadcasting Company, now in its 7th decade of bringing you baseball's memories. Baseball's milestones. Baseball's magical moments. And baseball's miracles. NBC Sports proudly presents the Major League Baseball Game of the Week.
Beautiful baseball Saturday at Wrigley Field. The difference, though, the wind blowing in today. Yesterday it was blowing out. The Reds overcame a 7-2 deficit and won in 12 by a score of 10-8. Hi, everybody. Bob Costas along with Tony Kubek. The Reds sit atop the National League West. They're 8 games over 500, and they're 2 games in front of the San Francisco Giants. Despite yesterday's loss, the Cubs have still won 8 of their last 10, and they're in front, surprisingly, in the National League East, a half-game lead over the favored Mets. A lot of people picked the Cubs to finish 5th, maybe even 6th, and that was before spring training. They came out of spring at 8-23, but they played surprisingly well to this point in the regular season, 5 games over 500. Good pair of right-handers today. Jose Rio, 4-0 for the Reds. The veteran Rick Sutcliffe, 5-3 for the Cubs. Let's check in now with Tony.
All right, thank you, Bob. We're down in the field with Mitch Williams, the stopper for the Chicago Cubs. Mitch, when the Pittsburgh Pirates lost Jim Gott for the year, they found out how detrimental it could be to their pitching staff. When the Cubs got you, you've changed the makeup of this pen and really helped keep this team in contention.
Well, I got brought over here to do a job that hadn't been getting done the last year, I guess, and I just got the opportunity. The bullpen in front of me has thrown the ball outstanding. Whenever that happens, it makes my job real easy.
Because you're a left-handed and because you are a closer, I'm not going to say there's a strange coincidence here, but you do take your bowling ball on the road with you, which is a little strange for anybody, let alone a pitcher.
Yeah, a lot of people take golf clubs, and I just take my bowling ball because it's something that can benefit me as far as my throwing, and I enjoy doing it.
Now, how does bowling on the road help your throwing?
Well, it keeps my elbow extended and stretched out. I have a problem with my elbow tightening up during the season if I don't get a lot of pitching in, so this is helping out a lot.
Now, recently you've taken up left-handed bow and arrow shooting. Now, how is that going to help your pitcher? You take that on the road?
No, I don't think I have much use for that on the road. I'm not real good with it yet, so I don't take it out around my friends.
All right, no, that's a good idea, man. Thank you so much. We'll be back to Wrigley Field with the starting lineup right after this.
Pete Rose's Reds have won 4 in a row, 9 of the last 12. Sabo in the leadoff spot. Ken Griffey Sr. in left. Larkin at short, one of the game's best all-round players. Davis, the center fielder and cleanup man. Paul O'Neill in right, usually hits well in this ballpark. Todd Benzinger, the former Red Sox, at first base. Lenny Harris will play second. Ron Oster available on the bench. Jeff Reed, the catcher. And Jose Rio, who has pitched well enough to be 9-0. They've won all 9 games he started. His ERA is under 2. His actual record, 4-0. As for Sutcliffe, he's at 5-3. He began the year 4-0, then fell into a bit of a slump. He did win his last outing, which was at Houston. He pitched 7 1/3 last Monday, and the Cubs won 5-3, and that snapped the losing streak for him.
Well, as Bob told you earlier, complete new outfield for Don Zimmer's Cubs. Dunston is fielding well, struggling with the bat. Law back off the neck injury. Sandberg, every time he goes out there, he wins a Gold Glove. Grayson Berrios, 2 of the new young stars in the game, and the wind blowing in out of the northeast, straight in, 20 miles an hour. These 2 pitchers don't need that. They're pitching so well.
Sabo first pitch swinging, skies one to left. It'll be Varsho for the catch.
There's an indication. When you come here, I guess middle of June, July, and August, that ball is in the seats and maybe even on the street. With the wind blowing straight in, it's a 250-foot fly ball.
If you're going to hit one out, you've got to drive a liner through the wind. Watching batting practice with Pete Rose, Eric Davis did just that, a wicked drive that just knifed its way through the wind and into the screen beyond the ivy and left. And Pete said if anyone hits one out today, it'll have to be that kind of ball. Just off the outside corner to Ken Griffey Sr., who has a higher batting average than Junior. He's at 304. Junior's at 295. The figure up on the screen is his lifetime average of 298. Ken Griffey Jr. at 295 with 7 home runs already and 17 RBIs for Seattle. And on the pregame show, you saw that great catch he made running into the wall at Fenway.
Asked Senior before the ball game when the last time he talked to Junior. He said a few days ago when he ran into the fence, spent some time in the hospital, never missed a ball game.
Ooh, Grace clutches it face high for the second out.
Well, Ken Griffey's been swinging a hot bat, and it's one of the reasons why Pete Rose has asked Eric Davis to play center field today with that sore hamstring so he can get Griffey in the lineup, and Griffey just lines very hard to Grace, who's got an outstanding glove. Bat's not bad either, to say the least.
Up steps Larkin, who's 3rd in the National League in hitting at 320. Getting out of that open stance and takes high. There was a pitch right there, Tony. As a kid, you'd have to say that by definition, that's a strike. When I was growing up watching baseball, at the letters, no chance it'll be called a strike anymore.
And the rule book says it's a strike, too.
Larkin finds one to his liking, and he'll hike that average a bit. The guy immediately in front of him is Lonnie Smith, who at present is on the DL for the Braves. He's at 324. The league is led by Will Clark, way in front, at 365.
And you can see how Sutcliffe is approaching this game already. With the wind blowing straight in, it sure changes. You don't nibble as much. He's had 3 balls hit pretty hard off him already, but he's saying, here it is, hit it, to try and conserve pitches easy. You want to hit it in the wind? Go ahead. Sutcliffe, who throws a couple kinds of fastball, good straight change, is messing around with a forkball, slider, and a curve. One of these guys that, no matter which pitch he wants to throw, he has such a feel for pitching, he can learn it overnight.
Two out, one on, and Davis drives one to right center. DeCenzo will track it down, and that's going to do it. No runs, a hit, and a man is left to the bottom of the 1st at Wrigley Field.
Behold.
Jose Rio has been simply spectacular this year. Don Zimmer will try this lineup against him. Doug DeCenzo in center field, Varsho in left. Sandberg hits 3rd at second base. Grace is the cleanup man in Dawson's absence. Berryhill behind the plate. Smith in right, Dwight Smith, Vance Law at 3rd, Sean Dunston slumping throughout the season at short, and Sutcliffe the pitcher. Good hitting pitcher.
Rio with an overpowering fastball, sometimes mid-90s, slider, and a great forkball. Bob told you earlier he could just as easily be 9-0. They've won all 9 games he's started. Came up as a kid, perhaps rushed. His defense, Griffey, Davis playing with a bad hamstring, O'Neill. This defense has allowed 36 unearned runs, Bob. That's the highest total in the National League. So although they hit well and their pitching, especially their bullpen, has been exceptional, they give away a lot of runs and did again yesterday.
DeCenzo at 164 since coming up from Iowa. Rio ahead of him 0-2. Only Mike Morgan, who's done surprisingly well for the Dodgers, has a better ERA in the National League than Rio. Morgan at 1.22. Here's the 0-2. Swing and a miss. He gets him on 3 pitches. Rio's basic assortment. Very good lively fastball. Hard slider. And the forkball that he uses pretty much as his changeup.
You wonder how the Cubs, when you look at numbers, can be where they are. Yes, their bullpen has been exceptional, but they, in so many offensive statistics, runs scored, they're 4th from the bottom. Not a very good slugging percentage, worst on-base percentage in the National League. And you start looking it over, and I think there's only one reason, and that's their manager. Don Zimmer has really managed this ball club at this point to be in first place. The team ERE is very good, but when the wind starts blowing out, it's going to change.
Well, the starting pitching to this point has been almost uniformly excellent, and the bullpen, yesterday an exception, has done the job. Yesterday they had the 7-2 lead, and Kilgus couldn't hold it after the Cubs had knocked Rick Mailer out, and the middle relief couldn't do the job either. But prior to yesterday, the bullpen throughout, the long men, the middle men, and Williams as the closer, have really come through excellently.
Well, what Zimmer has done is he has got his team second in the league in base stealing, and that is because he picks pitches so well for them to run on. He knows who's a weak throwing catcher, when a breaking ball is going to come. He picks the spots for his men, and he's got a sixth sense for calling pitch outs to get the opposition base stealers.
Full count now to Varsho. At the present pace, the Cubs would steal 198, which would be the highest team total since 1911. Rio's 3-2 pitch to Varsho. And we'll do it all over again. Varsho got a big hit off John Franco in the bottom of the ninth yesterday. The Reds had come back after trailing 7-2 to take an 8-7 lead. Varsho's double tied it at 8 in the last half of the ninth. It was the first time in 15 tries this year, and only the third time in his last 57 opportunities that Franco failed to come through with a save on the line. Walked him.
And again, some people would say that was an intuitive move on the part of Don Zimmer, letting a left-hander, Varsho bat against the left-hander Franco, but he said, no, I had right-hand hitters on the bench. I wanted to take Franco's screwball away. A little circle change, which was about a half screwball.
You know, it shows you the little subtleties of the game. I was talking with Franco earlier today. He said if he had gotten the call on a pitch to Varsho on 1-1 and had gone ahead of him 1-2, he would have pitched him differently, but he fell behind 2-1 when that third pitch just missed. Then he threw him a fastball on the next pitch. He said he might have tried to throw a screwball to him or some other breaking pitch, work it away outside the strike zone, see if he'd nibble a bit. But behind on the count 2-1, he threw him a fastball that he tried to run away from him. It stayed out over the plate, and Varsho hit it for a double. Speaking of being hit, Sandberg's on his way to first.
Looked like it hit him right in the middle of the back, and you can see Don Zimmer, who, like his outfield, is hobbling also with a bad knee, a foot that's going to require surgery. It took him a while to get out there, but that'll take your breath away. But you can see that Sandberg did not turn into the ball, as Tony Fernandez did earlier against Cecilio Guante. He turned his back to it, and yes, it does hurt. Usually there's not a severe injury when you do it this way. Just a fastball he overthrew, may have got a little bit of his upper arm and the back. Rio's just trying to run a fastball in on the fist of Sandberg, and it got away. As a kid pitcher, Rio did have control problems, but he was rushed so quickly. Jose Martinez now giving some instructions to Sandberg, what the situation is. Don't get doubled off. If the ball's hit to the second baseman, don't let him tag you. Getting a run down.
Grace was 3 for 6 yesterday, hitting .319 for the season. Outside ball one. In his short career, he's feasted on Reds pitching. .385 lifetime against Cincinnati.
Boy, and how that wind changed outfield play. The outfielders, especially Davis, are playing so shallow with the wind blowing in. It's hard to score from second base on a ground ball if it's hit hard. Look at where Eric Davis is. He's got, what, 100 feet behind him at least.
The fielders haven't had a chance yet. DeCenzo struck out on 3 pitches. Varsho walked on a 3-2 pitch. Then Sandberg was hit. The pitch to Grace. Two balls and a strike. You mentioned Rio being rushed. The Yankees had him when he came out of the Dominican Republic. He was in the majors by the time he was 19, then part of the Henderson deal to Oakland. Down low, 3-1, a pitch away from loading the bases. Rio is still only 24 years old, and and perhaps on the verge of greatness. He was 13-8 last year with an ERA of 2.39. Perhaps on the verge of big trouble here of more immediate importance. Throw in behind, close, but Varsho dives back.
A very unusual pickoff count. 3-0. Sometimes you do that to find out if the runner at second base is relaying signs or location. They also may have wanted to see if Grace was hitting. It is 3-1.
The bases are loaded. Entering the game, Rijo had an excellent K to walk ratio, 52-24, and his average was about 3.5 walks a game, which is not outstanding, but is not terribly wild. He's hit a man and walked 2 here with 1 out in the first.
Well, if you have the capabilities, as Rio does, of being a 10 strikeout per 9 innings guy, you can walk a few more and get away with it.
No score, bottom of the first, but the Cubs threatening. Berryhill with the bases loaded. Inside, ball 1. Illustration of what you were talking about, Tony. His last full outing on the 17th against the Pirates, he worked 7 innings. He did walk 4, but he struck out 10. And typically for him this year, a no decision, but the Reds won the game.
And you could see when he hit Sandberg, and even now he's starting to overthrow just a little bit to try and get the strikeout.
2-0.
He's going to have to, I think the pitching coach, Scott Breeden's going to have to come out and settle him down, and here he comes, just to say, look, let him put the ball in play. A fly ball in this situation isn't going to hurt you because the wind is blowing in a gale, as we indicated earlier. And he wants to start to get him back within himself. He's flying all over the mound and overthrowing the slider and the fastball.
I don't know if this is a factor in his failing to find a groove early or not. I mentioned his last complete outing was on the 17th, where he worked 7 innings against Pittsburgh. Then 5 days later, he's the starter in that rain-delayed and eventually postponed game against the Cardinals. Back on Monday in Cincinnati, he works 2 1/3 after a 2-hour wait, and then the game is postponed.
He might be too strong.
3-0. 6 straight misses.
Pete Rose, like he did a great deal of last year, has a 4-man rotation with the off days at this stage of the season.
Taking all the way for a strike. From the belt on 3-1. Now it runs out full.
Bob, that did not look like a fastball. It looked like 3-1 with the bases loaded, even though he's had control problem. He went slider or a cut fastball that sailed in. Bad pitch.
Pete Rose was telling me before the game he marvels at the confidence Rio has in the slider. He says even against punch and Judy hitters, he'll sometimes throw the slider on 2-0 or 3-1, and Pete thinks bad pitch, but Rio has confidence in it. In the air to right, it'll get a run home. Varsho tags. O'Neill with the catch. Sandberg's going to go to third. The throw is cut off. Grace holds at first. The Cubs have the 1-0 lead, and runners now at the corners with 2 out. Berryhill picking up the RBI on the sac fly.
Pete Rose, who got the extension. That extension about 3 days old now, a 30-day extension from A. Bartlett Giamatti. Let's go, Dwight. He's holding press conferences. He did after the ball game. Usually it's the first game in of the series, but he will not, after ball games, answer anything about his situation, the alleged gambling at all. Unless he has something specific to address, he will bring it up at a press conference.
Well, there are no baseball problems. Obviously, there are abundant problems off the field. This is the 1-0 pitch. Way high, 2-0. It's also obvious that Commissioner Giamatti, while mindful of the fact that commissioners have broad powers, and in the past, not just in baseball but in other sports, the courts have upheld those powers, he wants to make sure he doesn't abuse that. He wants to make sure that the full due process is given so that his decision, whatever it is, can't be overturned. Hit toward the hole. It's picked up by Harris. Rio covers, and the ball squirts free. They would have had him. The ball squirts free, and the Cubs have a 2-0 lead. It might have been because Benzinger and Rio almost ran into one another, and concerned about the collision, Rio might have taken his eye off the ball.
There was some confusion because Rio was a little bit slow getting over as Benzinger started after this ball. Then when Benzinger tried to come back, there were two people in the area. A very nice play by Harris, the second baseman, and then confusion. And there was confusion yesterday late in the ball game when the ball was knocked out of the glove of Benzinger, led to the Cubs tie, and then Rooms at the 2-run home run. So a good play negated by the drop ball by Rio.
I'm not so sure that Benzinger, that last angle wouldn't have revealed it, but Benzinger might have gotten his glove in the way and deflected it. They both reached for it at the same instant.
There's no question that Benzinger has learned a lot at first base from Perez, from Lee May, and from Pete Rose, all former first basemen, but he still is inexperienced, and that might have hurt him.
The runner goes on the first pitch.
Double steal, they got him hung up.
Yep. They've got Grace hung up between third and the plate, running him back toward third base, and Larkin, the shortstop, applies the tag. The ruling on the play immediately before is an infield hit for Dwight Smith, which means that both runs in this inning are earned. Rio down 2-0 after the first. Having a ball outside to Paul O'Neill to start the second. Sutcliffe staked to a 2-0 lead. We've got an interesting third angle on that play at first base. We'll show it to you after O'Neill does something here. 1-1.
O'Neill, who has been very overlooked. Look at the RBI total. That leads the ball club. You've got Daniels out, high on base percentage, RBI man. Usually you think of Eric Davis leading the club. He was out, and this guy's picked up the slack along with Barry Larkin. There's the forkball. Sutcliffe not taking quite as much time between pitches this season as pitching coach Dick Pohl told me. Walking fewer.
Lost between 20 and 25 pounds before the season started. Here's a ball hit in the air to center. DeCenzo backs up a few steps and tucks it away for the first out. Now, Benzinger is the next hitter. Watch what he did with the glove a moment ago. Lenny Harris makes an excellent play on the outfield grass. Here's the throw, and you decide, Tony, whose glove it actually drops out of. Rio and Benzinger go for it at the same instant, and I think Todd had it, and it drops out of that first baseman's glove.
There was confusion as Benzinger did not think that Rio was going to get over. Another thing about it, they have scored a hit to Smith, and obviously Smith is 2 strides away. I think that should be an error to Benzinger, although it was a tough play because Harris made a good play. Really what should have happened, 2 runs should have scored on no base hits in that inning. That was a charity hit.
The late Dick Young, the New York Daily News writer, and briefly with the New York Post before his death, always lobbied for a category called the team error, where if you couldn't find a culprit, and this may not be a perfect example of it, but if you couldn't find a culprit, a hit wasn't deserved, but it was difficult to pinpoint who should get the error, just score it a team error.
Well, that was in the glove of Benzinger. Well, it may have gotten bounced out by Rio as he went by, but I don't see that being a hit at all. I think with Dick Young and Jack Lang, the present head of the Baseball Writers Association, or rather he's a Hall of Fame guy now, he lobbied for that and still does. Ball that lands among outfielders, it should have been caught. Maybe they say it's in the sun, but it's obvious the play should have been made. That's the team error concept.
Benzinger came over from the Red Sox, and the deal had sent Nick Esaski and Rob Murphy, the left-handed reliever, off to Boston. The emergence of Charlton and Dibble really have taken up any slack you might have anticipated with the departures of Murphy and the right-hander Frank Williams. In the dirt, 2-2.
Bob, they talk of a lot of ways where a team can have its home field advantage, and the grass is higher in the infield here, but I think Sutcliffe is showing how he knows better than Rio did in that first inning anyway what the wind factor is in his ballpark. There have been 5 guys come to bat. They've all hit the ball pretty well off him. But he said, here, go ahead and hit it. Right down the middle, just tails away, and they can hit it into the wind in the air. Now, some days Sutcliffe can come out when the wind is blowing out, and he can become a sinker ball pitcher because he wants the ball on the ground. He said, here, hit it in the air.
That was his first strikeout. Last year, Rick was 13 and 14 with an ERA of 3.86. As we told you, he's off to a 5-3 start this season. Lenny Harris takes a breaking ball low. In 1987, Sutcliffe went 18 and 10, his second best year in Chicago. The highlight, of course, was the Cy Young season of 1984. Fastball for a strike.
You talked about Rick losing weight. At the end of last season, his manager Don Zimmer used the example of Carl Yastrzemski. When Zimmy managed up in Boston, said, look, every year he got older past 30, he took off 4 or 5 pounds. And then Doug Collins of the Bull in a basketball game, the Bulls coach, said, yeah, you'll be better off at your age. I had to do it when I played basketball. A little lighter, a little leaner, and you'll be better. Zim is trying to move Dunston back at short, and Dunston isn't. Finally, they get him to move back.
This will be a 2-1 pitch. Roll to first. Grace says, I'll do it myself. And a perfect top half of the second. Still 2-0 Cubbies. We step aside and return to Wrigley after this. In a shameless grab for airtime, these fans decide to compliment us, and we go for it. On a blustery day at Wrigley Field, here's Vance Law. He was at the plate when they tried a double steal. And Mark Grace got hung up between third and home and eventually was tagged out at third base. So Law resumes his at-bat against Rio. 1-1.
And that's the way Don Zimmer has had to play all season long, and even more so with so many of his key players. Dawson out with the power. His fourth place hitter, he's had to try and manufacture runs, steal and double steal, and more often than not, it works for Zimmer. But you live by the sword, you die by the sword. He just died by the last inning.
But it's also the thing you want to try to do against the Cincinnati club. If ever there's a club that you want to score against in the early innings, it's this one. Because with that bullpen, the deep bullpen anchored by Franco, if they get a lead on you into the late innings, you're almost certainly finished. In contrast, as Law is called out on strikes, the second strikeout for Rio, in contrast, the Reds can come back against you. More than half of their 26 victories this year have been in games where they trail. Yesterday, a perfect example. So they're down 2-0 here, but plenty of time to come back.
And the way Zimmer's bullpen was going to Lester, there were not too many teams coming back on the Cubs this year, with Mitch Williams down there, and Schiraldi, and Pico, and Wilson, and Perry. They've all been pitching very well out of the pen.
A ball low to Dunston, who's struggling at 171. He is 4 for his last 13, a brief bright spot. Had his first homer of the year Monday against the Astros. Almost went after it, but didn't bite. And just his second home run since the All-Star break last year. Now, here's a kid, you look at him and you said from the very start when he came up to the Cubs, a chance to be one of the game's best players. It really hasn't happened.
He's one of the only players I know offensively who waits too long. I always remember Ted Williams would wait, and then be quick with the hands. He waits so long that his swing is almost like a panic swing. And he swings in a lot of bad pitches. He doesn't start his swing smoothly. He starts it with a jerk and very quickly through the ball.
That's out of play. Talk about chasing too many pitches. All of last year, he had only 8 walks.
Come on, John.
He has 10 so far this year, so he's improved a bit in that regard, but he needs to be more selective.
Well, when Zimmer got the ball club from Gene Michael, he looked like he made a quantum leap, Dunston, offensively and defensively. And now he's plateaued and, in fact, gone backwards.
Just as Law did, he goes down looking. Third strikeout for Rio. Let's check with Marv in New York.
Thank you, Bob. In a Yankee Stadium, facing Dave LaPointe. Dave Parker leading off the second for the A's, connected for a 6th home run of the season. First place A's now lead the Yanks 3-0 behind Kurt Young, their bottom of the second. Back to Bob and Tony.
Okay, Marv. Dave Parker, of course, left Cincinnati and went to Oakland in the deal that brought this guy, Jose Rio, to Riverfront. A strike to Sutcliffe.
Come on, Rick.
Nobody's hit the ball hard off Rio. The troubles came with his control and a botched play at first in the first. He was behind the fastball, 1-2.
Rick Sutcliffe is the kind of guy, we talked about his pitching. We talked about how good a hitter he is that. Everything he touches, he's got a feel for things in sports. I've seen him shoot pool. He's an excellent pool player. I've played some basketball against him, fooling around. Outstanding basketball player. He's a guy that I bet you put a golf glove in his hands. I bet he could go out there and shoot 80 with a couple practice rounds.
The 2-2 pitch.
About like you, one of those all-round kind of athletic types.
I happened to observe that pickup basketball game. They wouldn't let me in. It was 3-on-3, and I was the 7th guy. But Eric Davis of the Reds was the best player on the court that day.
Well, Darryl Strawberry came on in that game. It might have been the most expensive basketball game ever held. George Bell was in the game. He'd just come up with $2 million a year contract that he signed. Eric Davis and Sutcliffe. Oh.
Third walk, Rio is issued, plus he's hit a man. His pitch count is mounting here. He's already thrown 41, and we're in the last half of the second. Strike to DeCenzo. One of the 3 strangers in the Cub outfield. Dwight Smith and Gary Varsho are the others, with Webster, Walton, and Dawson all disabled. There goes Sutcliffe, and he can just have it. And now it's a balk going to be called. I don't know what Rio was thinking. The effect is the same, and Sutcliffe ought to be very angry because statistically it's going to cost him a stolen base.
Well, the effect is exactly the same because if the balk is called, it's no pitch. So they will remove that. I mean, the Benzinger is playing behind Sutcliffe, and he's not going anywhere, and Rick just took a walking, almost a running lead. And when he stopped his delivery, there's the balk call. So there's so many crazy rules that came into play last year when they were calling that there's such an enormous total of balk calls. If he throws that pitch and DeCenzo hit it, they all advance the base, the balk is off, and it got so confusing last year, even for the umpires. They had to go back to the old rule. They got the discernible stop.
It was preposterous last year. There was no useful purpose served. And many games, especially early in the year, became travesties. Slow-footed guys, no threat to run, being balked home from third with 2 outs in the 9th inning to win games. 2-2. Check of the scoreboard. Toronto was all over the White Sox yesterday, and boy, Jeff Torborg is having a nightmare in his first year as the White Sox manager. They're tied at 3 in the 5th today. Oakland and the Yankees, the Parker homer, Kurt Young working against LaPointe, and a 3-0 lead for the A's at Yankee Stadium. They've got baseball's best record. Another 2-2 pitch, and the count is out full.
Blue Jays still looking for a permanent manager. Interim Cito Gaston standing at 7 wins and 3 losses. They don't pick it by the end of this weekend, which they said they would, have their manager for the rest of this year and maybe next year. He could end up 9-3, and then how do you fire him?
Got him. I don't know how he took that on 3-2. A mixed bag for Rio. 4 strikeouts, 3 walks, a hit batter, and a balk. Back after this from your local station. In a row for L.A. Steve Howe was the Rookie of the Year the next season. Valenzuela in 81, then Sachs in 82. And the Rick Sutcliffe of today will turn 33 in less than a month.
Got a new second baseman playing behind Rick Sutcliffe. Apparently, that hit in the back that Sanderson took from Rio, he had to leave the ball game, and Curtis Wilkerson has come on.
Jeff Reed fouls one back as we start the third. No change other than that in the lineup, so Wilkerson will hit third.
One of the subtle moves that Jimmy Fry, the general manager, made, and some of the little deals that have paid off for him. Wilkerson, a decent utility player, a decent runner. Came in at short yesterday.
And a breaking ball for a strike, 0-2.
You know, Jimmy Fry did a lot of things right. I don't know if they can sustain the makeup of this team now and all the injuries, but you go out and get a Mike Bilecki. He's had one bad start out of 8. Lloyd McClendon came over. He had a home run, helped win a ball game, his first at bat.
Here's Vance Law on the slow bounder, and Reed is cut down at first. You know, on the Reds side, you take a look at them at 26 and 18, and this despite the fact that the guys you'd regard beginning the year as their first and second starters are combined 7 and 11. Talking about Jackson and Browning. Jackson's 3 and 7. Browning's 4 and 4, and their combined ERA is around 5. And despite that, they're in first place.
Well, it will be interesting to see the effects of Pete Rose and Scott Breeding, the pitching coach, going a good part of last year with a 4-man rotation going on 3 days rest. Jackson pitched 260 innings, had about 15 complete games. You wonder if there will be an effect this year.
The word on Sandberg, bruised upper back. And he's taken out perhaps more as a precaution than anything else. And Wilkerson at second. Here's the 1-1 pitch to Rio. Who apparently has come under the influence of Eric Davis. Notice the way Rio kind of wiggles that bat up at the plate. He's not going to confuse anybody that he's a hitter of equal prowess, but he's got the style down.
Same stance, straight up, slightly open stance, that toe pointed toward the pitcher. He's a hitting clone of Eric.
And another chance for Law, who charges, throws on the run, and retires Rio.
Vance, who tried to play through a very painful injury to his neck, thought it'd go away, a bone spur, irritating a muscle area, a lot of spasms, and finally had to get him out of the lineup, and now he's swinging the bat better.
Sabo taking his time leaving the on-deck circle, trying to give Rio a breather as he returns to the dugout. Sabo's 0 for 1, started the day at 244, and has lost a couple of points after that first at-bat. In his first 2 homers of the season in consecutive games earlier this week against the Cardinals in Cincinnati. A ball high. In fairness, you got to look at what Sabo did last year. He's hitting .312 up to the All-Star break, and with his refreshing personality and the somewhat peculiar appearance with the crew cut and the goggles, he became a very popular figure. But in 5 or 6 years in the minor leagues, he never had overwhelming stats, and he hit just .216 after the All-Star break last year. So he may be settling now into what's really his level as a hitter.
Well, if they get the kind of third base play they've had from him last year, and Pete said, and a lot of other people thought he was a Gold Glove winner, and you get .270 at him the way he can steal bases. He's a strong little guy, will provide some home run power and extra base hitting power. That's getting a lot out of a guy.
A lot of doubles, more so than the homers.
His energy level was so high that first half, a lot of people thought he burned himself out. They want him to try and pace himself a little bit better. And it was a terribly hot summer, as you recall, where a lot of players wore themselves down.
Sutcliffe's 3-1 pitch, and now it's out full. Rick hasn't walked anybody yet. He struck out 1, allowed 1 hit, and leads 2-0 with 2 out and nobody on in the top half of the third. Out of play.
There are some scouts who, if they had seen Sutcliffe throw, they would not have signed him to a contract. He's what they call a hooker or a wrist wrapper. And we've shown it to you before, but when he gets at the back of his delivery, when he's perched on his right leg, He's got that ball wrapped in his hand, and some scouts say we won't sign him. He's going to come up with a bad arm. Well, it hasn't happened. Look at it.
Here's one smack to left. Varsho turning, and it makes it out of here just the way we were talking about. A low-line drive that could cut through the wind. Those high-fly balls are going to be pushed back and down, but this one just sliced through the wind and into the basket above the ivy and short of the seats. And the Reds are back to within 2-1.
You know, about 4 years ago, we were talking to Rick Leach. He was a Michigan graduate also, and Rick was talking about Saban, what a skinny guy he was. He weighed about 150 pounds, then he got on a weight training program, and within a couple of years, he blossomed up to about 190, and he added that kind of strength to enable him to hit the ball that hard.
Griffey really scorched one his first time up, but his line drive was caught at first base by Grace. Hit .336 for the Big Red Machine in 1976. Over 300 5 different times during his first tour of duty in Cincinnati. He told me that Ken Griffey Jr. was not really that interested in the ball club then. When he was a little kid of 6 or 7. Didn't really have a hero with all those heroes to choose from. Bench and Perez and all the rest. He said the only baseball hero Ken Griffey Jr.'s ever really had was Ricky Henderson when Dad was playing with the Yankees. There's Sutcliffe's first walk following the Sabo home run. Let's take a look at the pitch Sabo hit. It was 3-2. And let's see what Rick delivered.
Won't say it's a batting practice fastball, but you can see Berryhill sitting slightly outside, and the ball drifts right back down the middle of the plate. And it was one of those, you got a couple-run lead. The leadoff hitter's not known for his power. Here it is, hit it into the wind, and he hit it very hard through the wind.
Larkin singled his first time.
Well, Pete Rose likes to run also, and you've got a catcher behind home plate. Some think Damon Berryhill is the best all-run young catcher in the game, and that even includes Benito Santiago and some of the others. A great thrower, Berryhill.
There's Wilkerson in place of the injured Sandberg. He throws Larkin out, and a Sabo homer is all the Reds get in the third. 2-1 Chicago, and we'll be back. Next Saturday on the Game of the Week, these Cubs visit Pedro Guerrero and the Cardinals, or you might see the Giants and the Braves from Atlanta. Giants 2 back of the Reds in the National League West. Varsho, Wilkerson, and Grace here in the last half of the third, and a strike from Rio.
Kevin Mitchell and Will Clark against those young, hard-throwing Atlanta pitchers. Boy, they've got some good ones. Smoltz, Glavine, Smiths. Ooh.
Glavine pitches for them tonight in St. Louis. Smoltz pitched well, but lost on 3 first-inning runs, 3-0 to Scott Terry and the Cardinals last night. And although the Braves are in the midst of, I think, a 6-game losing streak, it's mostly been their inability to hit. Those young pitchers have continued to throw well, and they've got the makings of a contender's pitching staff if the rest of the club can mature around them.
Well, Lonnie Smith was hitting so well, then they lost him with an ankle injury. They've still with Derek Lilliquist, the left-hander, not a hard throw, but a good-looking young pitcher, and guys like Merker and Avery and Burlingame, young pitchers in the minor league. But Bobby Cox has been going out the last 3-4 years and personally scouting them. And he's building around pitching.
Another kid named Tommy Green will be in the majors soon. The 0-2 pitch again to Varsho. This is outside.
But again, that's a ballpark like Wrigley Field, Seattle, Fenway Park. It is so hard to develop a young pitching staff because the ball flies out of those ballparks. It's so frustrating. These guys have a good year here and there, a couple of years, but young pitchers get burned out. I guess that's one of the reasons why Mark Langston wanted to get out of there and go to Montreal, at least temporarily.
Bouncing ball slowly right side. Benzinger with Rio covering, and they botch it again.
Missed the bat. Now Rio goes over and tags Varsho thinking he missed the bag. So once again, Rio a little bit slow getting over. Very slow grasser. You see how it slows it down. Benzinger doesn't get a lot on the throw. He throws him a changeup, and he was going to be safe anyway. The inexperience at first base. We talked about the unearned runs, but we're also seeing some mental mistakes, part of the defense, and it isn't just the unearned runs, it's giving that extra out or two per inning, and you get the big guys, they turn around, they come up later on. Then those are earned runs, of course. You get more hitters, you get more than 27 outs.
Wilkerson's first at-bat, replacing Sandberg after Ryan was hit by a pitch in the back in the first inning. And leaving this game might sting more than usual for Sandberg because his reputation as a game-of-the-week hitter is unsurpassed. He usually goes nuts when the NBC cameras are on him, especially if it's a home game on a Saturday afternoon. I think we figured out one time last year he had a career average of about 440 with about a half dozen homers in Saturday network games. So I guess that means he should have a bad year next year when we don't have the contract anymore.
Watch the runner.
1-1.
What Don Zimmer is so good at is certain times in the count, he will try and pick a breaking ball. Rio's case, maybe a fork ball. Pitch that will be hard for a catcher to handle. Here comes the hitters and the base runners pitch right now. 2-1.
Varsho aboard with an infield hit. The only ball that's left the infield against Rio was Berryhill's sacrifice fly in the first. Had him leaning, but he gets back. Much attention here in Chicago. Focused across town on the Bulls game at Chicago Stadium, and look at this. On the Bulls home floor, Chuck Daly's Pistons in front by 11 at the half. Series knotted at 1. Runner going on the 2-1 pitch. Hit to short. They don't get the force. They do get the out at first.
And the middle infielders, Larkin and Harris, and Larkin controls the defense as to whom is covering, and Larkin gave the open mouth signal before this pitch was throwing, which means you are covering, so he did not leave his position vacated. And you sometimes try and guess right. Most of the time you go according to the pitch selection, fastball or changeup or breaking ball.
So that's a 6-4-3 out at first rather than double play. Here's Grace, who walked his first time. Rips one, and Larkin cannot come up with it. Hit him in the face on the short hop, and he's down. Varsho moves on to third base after hesitating with the ball hit in front of him. And now we check on Barry.
It was a ball that was slicing away and sinking, not hit real hard off the end of the bat with a wicked English. And when he tried to short hop it or lunge to get it on the fly and pick it cleanly, the ball hit beneath his glove and bounded up and hit him right in the face. Just on the, looked like the cheekbone. Larry Starr, the trainer, is out now, along with Pete Rose, and it hit him very, very solidly.
So the former Olympian and first-time All-Star last year, Barry Larkin, is down for the moment. You can bet you'll see this guy in many an All-Star game before his career is over.
Well, three of their best players, if he goes out, Cal Daniels, one of their best three. Eric Davis, obviously their best one, missed some, still playing with the hamstring injury, and Barry Larkin ranks right up there with the top three on this team, and he got hit very solidly.
What was it Whitey Herzog said? And Whitey is always very frank in his assessments of his own team and opponents. He said if you were starting a team, given his age and all-round ability with the glove and with the bat, you might pick Larkin. Well, thank you to the boys in the truck. There they go. Larkin, Will Clark, Strawberry, and Eric Davis, four excellent young players, and young is the key. He was talking about building a team. want to have guys who can be with you for 5 or 6 years, these might be the choices.
And I think the same thing could be said over the American League about Tony Fernandez. A shortstop who can hit is invaluable, like a catcher who can hit.
That's why you could make a very good case for Alan Trammell, who has never won an MVP award in a single year, as being the most valuable player in the American League over the last 5 years.
Wouldn't argue that.
Here's the way this inning has gone. Varsho reaches on what's ruled an infield hit. Wilkerson is out at first on a hit and run, 6-4-3, as Varsho beats the attempted force play at second, but they do get it on to first in time to get Wilkerson. And then Grace hits this ball toward Larkin with, as Tony said, lots of English on it. He dives, the ball comes up, bounds over his glove, hits him in the side of the face. Apparently, he's going to stay in the game.
You know, Bob, we may be seeing, as Pete now leaves, why Pete Rose's team has finished,
well, maybe not,
second the last 4 years. They obviously have the physical talent, but we've seen, and that was the mistake on the part of Barry Larkin. He tried to make a shoestring catch or trap it, and the ball got away from him. But they make so many mistakes that lead to so many more base runners and hurt their pitching staff some.
He is going to come out, and what's going to happen is Harris moves from second base to shortstop, and Ron Oster comes off the bench to play second. Not as serious as we might have first feared when he was face down in the dirt, but taking no chances, they get him out of there.
It did not look like it split the skin, like there was any blood there, but it sure did shake him up, and they've got to be aware that there might be a concussion involved in this as soundly as that ball hit him. Harris got a chance to play at second base when Ron Oster was struggling with the bat, and then he slightly injured a hamstring. They put Lenny Harris in, and the team was winning. So Harris, a very valuable guy, and he moves to short.
Last time Berryhill was at the plate, the bases were loaded with 1 out. He lofted a sac fly to right. First and third, 1 out here. Slow roller foul. You know, when you think about a pitcher's earned run average, and it doesn't apply here because both these balls were ruled infield hits, but sometimes, although the ERA is as good a stat as any as you'll find to measure a pitcher's effectiveness, sometimes a guy catches a break with a low ERA when if you go over every game, it's really his inability to pitch out of trouble. Liner, base hit over Harris. First solid base hit they've had, and now it's 3-1 Chicago. You know what I'm saying, Tony? Very often you'll have the tough pitcher who, if an error is made behind him, bears down, or if there's some kind of misplay, a bloop or whatever, he bears down. With the other guy, the door is open, and yet it doesn't count against his ERA because the thing started with an error.
Well, the hit that Smith got in the first should not have been a hit. He was 2 strikes from the bag. It was charitable official scoring. And the other one on Grace, or rather on Varsho, that shouldn't have been a hit either. It was just misplayed. Change-up thrown by Benzinger. There's going to be earned runs against Rio when they should have been out of the inning possibly.
All 3 runs so far are earned against Rio. Berryhill has 2 RBIs. The point I was making was a general point, not an indictment of Rio here. In fact, if anything, Rio's a victim here. But there are times when you can get out of a game having improved your ERA, and it doesn't necessarily mean you pitched all that well.
He didn't help himself with the walks and hit batsmen either, though, but the defense behind him was shoddy, and that contributed to it.
Two and 1 to Smith. His infield hit made it 2-0 in the first. Sabo's homer in the top of this inning cut it to 2-1. Now 3 singles have reopened it to 3-1 Cubs. 2-2.
When you look at the way the Cubs are playing, and maybe in a couple of weeks Andre Dawson will be back, and Mitch Webster will be back Monday, and Walton maybe in a week or 2 coming off the hamstring. Zimmy's got a pretty good situation because he's got Dwight Smith and DeCenso, several of the others don't want to get sent back to the minor leagues, and they are maybe playing above their heads in certain areas.
Fought it off and fouled it off. Checking other scores, the White Sox now creep in front of the Blue Jays. It remains 3-0 A's at Yankee Stadium. California, the Red Sox rained out at Fenway. How about Chuck Finley? He flirts with the no-hitter. Little bloop by Jody Reed, all he allowed last night. Chopper back over the mound and into center field as neither Oster nor Harris could get it, and it's 4-1 Cubs.
On this slow grass, there's another one. It looked like Harris, who just moved over the short, was thinking more of covering the second base bag than getting the baseball. It's probably the pitch that Rio wanted to make. He wanted to get the ball on the ground. He did. It did find a hole, but it looked like it was catchable. A sinking fastball, perfect pitch, low and away. And the ball sneaks through. And out comes Scott Breeden. Harris, and you do have a different angle off the bat from second base to short, kind of circled the ball. He came in toward the bag and then couldn't loop back. He didn't take a straight line.
The left-hander, Tim Burtsis, it looks like, yeah, that's Burtsis, is up and throwing, but he's just begun to limber up. So Rio's going to stay in here. Trailing 4-1. He's allowed 1 earned run or less in 7 of his 9 outings. And if you're just joining us, the Reds have won all 9 games he started. He's had 5 no decisions, overall record of 4-0, and his ERA coming in was 1.57. Hill at second, Smith at first. Smith now 2 for 2 with a pair of RBIs. They granted time to Vance Law very late. These are the guys with all the runs batted in. 2 for Berryhill, who's at second, and a pair for Smith, who's at first. 2 runs in the first, 2 more here in the third. 4-1 Chicago, and Rio's not out of it yet. In the dirt and blocked by Reed.
And Bob, you know the pitch before when Vance Law requested time was given it what he was doing. It's an old Charlie Lau trick, and of course Vance Law was under his influence with the White Sox for a while. There's a lot of flashing of signs or location from the man at second base, and when Vance Law called time, he also glanced down at the catcher to see where his location was, in or out, to see if the second base runner's got the signal straight. Satellite dishes sure have changed it. Everybody taping ball games from that center field camera, and sign stealing is so much easier if you're a runner at second base than it ever was. Of course, the hitter's got to want to take them, and I know Vance Law would love to have location. You get a location inside in this situation, you know it's not a curveball.
Roll to first. Benzinger boots it, recovers, and gets there unassisted. Harrowing day so far at first base for young Todd Benzinger.
You'll see this more commonly on teams that play 2/3 of their games in artificial surfaces. Cincinnati do half their games at home and the rest on the other plastic parks, that they have trouble, especially when they get on a slow infield. They're used to the ball getting to them quickly, and when it hits the grass, it slows up and upsets their rhythm. And we're seeing a lot of that today with the Cincinnati defense in the infield. They're walking him to get to a left-hand hitter who's not a bad one. And Rick Sutcliffe, as we indicated. And it's the play to make with Dunston Ray placed him.
The intentional walk will now up Rio's total to 4 walks. You saw the 4 home runs hit by Sutcliffe lifetime. That doesn't count one that he hit here, a tremendous shot over the back of the bleachers in the first game of the playoffs against San Diego in 1984. He is dangerous. We're in the 3rd inning, and Rio has thrown 72 pitches. Now, keep in mind, this guy has never pitched a complete game. As effective as he's been, he's never pitched a complete game for Cincinnati.
Well, in effect, he's had 8 or 9 days rest, pitching only an inning in the 3rd, his last outing, so Pete may take that into consideration. Also, that the bullpen was worked pretty hard yesterday in that extra inning ball game.
But all things considered, his record of never going the distance and the pitch total to this point, we are not going to see him out there, my guess would be, in the 7th or 8th inning, even if he shuts the Cubs down from this point on. Swing and a miss by Sutcliffe as he got in on it.
When you've got John Franco as a closer, and you're on a 4-day rotation, as Pete was a lot last year and again right now, you're not going to push your pitchers quite as far. You say, look, Save him a little bit for next time. I get one of the best closers, if not the best, in the National League.
0-2. In fact, Franco has saved all 4 games Rio has won this year. And the nature of the game has changed. Very often, the teams that have the highest complete game totals as a team are the clubs with the worst bullpens. Look at Pittsburgh. They lose Gott, and the starters' complete game totals jump, but that's not necessarily a good thing. 1-2. The Cubs had more complete games as a team last year than they probably will this year because the bullpen was the worst in the league. Now that's been turned upside down. Schiraldi and Pico have been setting up Williams. Williams has been the closer. The staff in general will have fewer complete games. The 1-2. Struck him out with some high heat. That's the 5th strikeout for Rio, and we've gone through 3 with the Cubs in front 4-1. It's not Johnny Unitas. It's not Bill Buckner. It's Eric Davis wearing those high tops. He flied to center his only time up. That 257 mark ought to climb by year's end. Sutcliffe leading 4-1 as he works in the 4th, and a strike at the knees.
Remember the catch he made early in September, a game we did? Finish a ball game here. September of '87. He's never really been quite healthy since then with the legs and a hand injury. That was the year he had 37 home runs and stole 50 bases in 129 games. And he would have been that year the first 40-40 man, but he missed the last 3 weeks of the season.
Bob Engel not very high on his hit parade right now, having put him in an 0-2 hole with that last call. Did he bite? Engel is going to punch him out of there. Second strikeout for Sutcliffe. Yeah, that play you were referring to was in right center field, a game-ending catch. He ran into the wall very hard, and that finished him. And last year, he played through a variety of injuries, big and small, wrist, shoulder, ankle. He was almost always hurting.
Well, he has already indicated that not too far in the future, he preferred getting out of center field. To save some wear and tear on his legs.
In fact, this is the first game Pete has started him in center since he came off the DL. He had been playing left.
Pete asked him if he would play center field today if his leg could handle it. Still a little tenderness in the hamstring, and he said he would, and that allowed Griffey to get in the lineup.
1-1 to Paul O'Neill. Flied out to center his first time up. Well, you have the George Brett comments, referring now to what you were saying about Davis. The George Brett comments when he tore his leg up. Teared his leg up would have been interesting.
For a Syracuse grad, it's very, well, you're not really a grad. You went to Syracuse, it would have been interesting.
2-2. With 1 out and nobody on here in the 4th.
Sutcliffe now is starting to take more time between pitches. He's usually likes to walk around a lot, and he's starting that again. Very, very slow pace. Something that Dick Pohl has suggested would help him out more, get a better rhythm going. Getting much more methodical now. He's gone to many more breaking balls, too.
Berryhill hangs out the sign, and Sutcliffe works 2-2. A high bounder. Wilkerson charges at second. Close play coming, and they got it. Anyway, before my grammar got in the way, there was a point to be made here. Brett's cleats got hooked in a seam in the turf in Kansas City. He rips his leg up, and he's had so many injuries, and now he's in his mid-30s. And he said, perhaps impetuously, and he sort of softened the statement later, but he said, look, I got to get off the artificial turf. If I'm going to play till I'm 38 or 40, this just can't go on. It's too much wear and tear here.
And people are looking, and they saw what has happened to Andre Dawson getting back on the grass. Although he's hurt now, it's going to help his career longevity.
Varsho in fair ground as he makes the catch to retire Benzinger, and Sutcliffe sets him down 1-2-3 in the 4th. Moving on now to the last half of the 4th. As we were saying earlier, the courts generally have upheld the broad powers of league commissioners. And there seems to be little doubt that Bart Giamatti has the power to impose whatever he deems an appropriate punishment on Pete Rose once the evidence has been weighed. It's a shame that the thing has dragged on the way it has for months now, with innuendo and rumor replacing substantial fact. Here's a ball sliced foul. The batter is DeCenzo. He'll be followed by Varsho and Wilkerson in the last of the fourth. But in any case, it's also clear that in granting the 30-day extension, it's Giamatti's intention to make sure that procedure is followed in a way where it makes it almost impossible that the courts would overturn his decision.
Well, the powers of that office are antiquated, let's face it. I mean, Pete is entitled to due process, isn't he? To face his accusers, for somebody to have subpoena power to find out what these guys are really talking, whether or not it's truthful or not under oath. The big decision for Pete and his attorneys, Reuben Katz and the others, is do they leave this in the hands of the commissioner, or do they challenge whatever his decisions may be in front of the allegations and then take it to a different court? Do they want that big report out in public, which could happen?
Full count now.
I don't think there's any question that Mr. Giamatti is going to give the benefit of the doubt to Pete Rose, if there's any doubt. But the system is antiquated.
DeCenzo has struck out twice, and he pops this one up on the infield. They have a team meeting near the mound, and it's Harris who drops the ball.
Well, we've heard about the bad wind, the bad sun here, and he ran across the mound. Again, a very catchable baseball, and Cincinnati's defense is eating them alive today.
That's the first charged error, but Pete Rose has watched his team botch many plays already.
He went on a little upgrade, but even at that, the ball hits right in the center of his glove and pops out.
He earns himself a spot on the blooper segment of This Week in Baseball, but that's the only good thing that's going to come of it.
Just like your teared is good. Will they replay that? I can hear Mal Allen now. And now let's listen to one of the great voices in all of sports, Bob Costas.
Well, he done teared his leg up, Mel.
We got it. Oh, boy.
Varsho has walked and had an infield single. In the immortal words of Dizzy Dean, he'd have been safe if he would have slud. But he didn't, and he ain't.
Mm-hmm.
I think to finish up on Rose, although it's not possible to advance the story at this point because substantial facts are tough to come by, and those are now in the hands of the commissioner, and Pete's attorneys are putting their side of the case together. I think the last thing Giamatti wants to do, if the evidence allows him any other out, the last thing he wants to do is suspend him for life. The possibility of a year's suspension is there. And it's possible that Rose and his people would accept that rather than battle on endlessly. Hit hard and foul.
Well, I am one of those, and many of Pete's friends, who refuse to believe he ever been in a baseball game. I cannot think the worse of that man.
I don't want to believe it.
No, there have been a lot of other allegations, of course, but that one I refuse to believe. You know, Pete's going to have to be careful he doesn't push Rio too far in this thing. I mean, I know his bullpen.
That helps. That helps.
2-1 count. That's that runner's pitch. DeCenzo started the last time he was on base in that situation. And Rio held the ball, and just that little flinch towards second base where he was starting to break that leg to go to second for the attempted steal or hit and run. It killed him. Good call by the first base umpire, Paul Runge.
So, that negates the error made earlier by Harris, who had only moved to shortstop from second the inning before when Larkin left the game after being hit in the face. 2-2 now to Varsho. Down and in, full count.
He has been in and out of that mystical word, that pitching coaches use, his rhythm all day. Like when hitter's hitting, he says, I'm seeing the ball. When he's not, I'm not seeing the ball. And that can take a lot into consideration. And Rio has been in and out of that rhythm.
That one had Jose Martinez diving for cover down at first. Just to finish the point, and then we'll let it rest. Apparently, the way the courts have viewed the powers of commissioners in the past is that their rulings would be allowed to stand if a player or team official went outside the highest court of his sport and went into the legal system of the country at large. They will allow a decision of a commissioner to stand unless it is decided that that decision was a gross misapplication or misuse of the commissioner's power.
Well, Marvin Miller was exactly right, the former executive director of the Players Association.
Shallow center. Davis will do it.
The process for the players is there is a grievance procedure, an impartial arbitrate. A manager does not have that, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's right. Marvin Miller can't become actively involved on Pete's behalf, or in this case Don Fear and the Players Association, as they might on behalf of a player. Wilkerson. Fouled into the seats, beneath 200 in limited duty. Hit 293 for Texas last year, but of course they've got Scott Fletcher, and then they picked up Julio Franco, and all he's done is lead the league in RBIs to this point for Texas since coming over from Cleveland, so there was no place for Wilkerson to play regularly in Texas.
Those little subtle things Jimmy Fry has done to improve the bench strength of this ball club.
A 1 pitch. A ball and a strike. Speaking of Texas, Palmeiro is the second leading hitter right now. The former Cub is hitting .345. He's the American League's second leading hitter after Carney Lansford, who's a spring hitter if ever one lived. Seems like Lansford always leads the league in hitting till around June 1st. He's at .367 right now for Oakland. The safe bet is he'll finish around .280.
A deal that saw 5 left-handed pitchers involved in it for the Cubs and the Texas Rangers. Really, it's one of those that truly can be said a deal that helped both teams.
We're only in the 4th, and Rio's close to 100 pitches. Line drive, base hit. A 2-out hit for Wilkerson.
Let's go, Mark. You need it.
Rio, the 3rd scheduled hitter for Pete Rose in the 5th, and that'll be the end of him. We'd like to see him get out of this inning so he doesn't waste another pitcher and have to go with a double switch, waste a player off his bench. Rose has 7 extra men, now just 6. Oster coming in the ball game.
After Larkin was injured. The count to Grace. Berryhill on deck. And that one's in there. 4-1 Cubs as they bat in the last half of the 4th. You look at Rio, it's amazing with the stuff he has and some of the great outings he's had over the last 2 years with Cincinnati. He has never pitched a shutout in his career. He's handed shutouts over to relievers, but he's never gone the distance with a shutout. Runner going, slow hopper. Harris is there, and that puts an end to it in the last half of the 4th. And we'll be back after these messages from your local station. Shadows creeping toward the edge of the stands, and eventually will move out toward the playing field. on this pretty Saturday afternoon at Wrigley. Lenny Harris to start it in the 5th. And he takes a strike from Rick Sutcliffe, who leads it 4-1. One of the 2 Cincinnati hits. Chris Sabo's 3rd home run of the year. His 3rd actually this week. Law creeping in at 3rd base as Harris falls behind 0-2. The Reds, as you mentioned, Tony, have finished 2nd 4 straight times in the National League West. The record in that peculiar category in the National League would be the Giants. The Willie Mays, Juan Marichal Giants of the mid to late 60s. They finished 2nd 5 straight seasons. Struck him out on 3 pitches. In 65 and 66, 2nd to the Dodgers. 2nd behind the Cardinals in 67 and 68. And then in the first year of divisional play, they were 2nd in the National League West behind the Braves.
Well, last season, Pete Rose Reds were 22 and 22 at this same time. They're 8 games above 500 right now. They're a 44-game stretch.
Jeff Reed lines one, looks like it'll settle in there for a hit. It's cut off by DeCenzo. It'll hold him to a single.
There's an outstanding addition right there by Murray Cook. When young Terry McGriff just didn't pan out, and Bo Diaz went down with some knee problems and then had some problems at home with a child that had some surgery, Jeff Reed filled in very well. And left-handed hitting catchers are not easy to find. Put the ball in play. Now Collins is going to pinch hit.
So we mentioned Juan Marichal. His son-in-law Jose Rio is finished after 4 innings of work, and it was a struggle for him. Tim Burtsis apparently will succeed him, and the veteran switch hitter Dave Collins bats for Rio with 1 out and 1 on in the top half of the 5th. Pushes a bunt, and it's foul. Collins still runs well. Might have lost a half step on the peak of his career when he was a threat to steal 60 bases or more in a season.
Dave Collins is really struggling from the left side. He's hitting just .077. Right-handed, he's hitting over 400 so far this year. That's why Law will stay way in, try and take the bunt away. And Sutcliffe, the slimmer Rick Sutcliffe, has helped his fielding also. He's a little livelier on the mound now because of that.
Collins is 36 years old, had some good years in his first go-around with the Reds at .318 in 79, .303 the next year. Behind in the count, 0-2.
Mark Gray's playing behind the runner at first base. He's a catcher. Also, they've got the lead, so if he can take a little bit of the gap away from Collins in case Sutcliffe was a breaking ball that is pullable, he's trying to cover the gap.
He wouldn't chase it. 1-2. Collins stole 79 bases for the 1980 Reds. A few years later, he swiped 60 for Toronto. Struck him out. 2nd in this inning, 4th in the game for Sutcliffe. Collins now just 1 for 14 from the left side as a pinch hitter, while going 4 for 9 swinging righty off the bench.
Talking to Dick Hole, the pitching coach, and he was talking about Sutcliffe always had a good straight change, something the Dodger organization teaches better than anybody. Now with that forkball, which I think is the pitch he just got Collins, it gives him the extra dimension.
Sabo's flied to left and homered. And isn't it about time that Ron Peronowski gets some credit as a great pitching coach? And of course, when you talk about guys who come through the Dodger system, it's the whole organization and the minor league people.
Belcher, Leary, and now Morgan.
Yep. You get guys who've had trouble with other clubs, and 3 in a row have come over to the Dodgers and found themselves.
The philosophy of pitching that goes way back to the days of the late Branch Rickey is stuck with that organization. How they approach hitters and the mechanics, and every pitcher that's gone through there, including Sutcliffe and Sutton, they add something more to that philosophy.
Shallow center field, DeCenzo shades his eyes and puts it away. No runs, a hit, a man stranded. Still 4-1 Chicago. It's nosebleed territory in the new press box at Wrigley Field. Boy, you got to peer down with the binoculars from this elevation. Bob Costas, along with Tony Kubek. It's a nice little convivial gathering.
Did you do what Harry Carey did here? He's got his own special golf cart to transport him up and down this.
No, I made the climb entirely under my own power.
You're doing a good job. Now let's see if you can pick that up and do a good job on the remainder of this game.
Here we go with Tim Burtsis picking it up from Jose Rijo. Last half of the fifth, 4-1 Chicago. Berryhill has a sacrifice fly and an RBI single as he stands in. Burtsis was part of the deal, along with Rio, coming from Oakland for Dave Parker in December of '87.
He's averaged about a strikeout per inning pitch to this point in the season. His control has been a lot better, with Pete being able to spot him as a setup man at times. They've got a great variety in their bullpen. You get Dibble throwing the ball almost 100 miles an hour. Franco, who's equally effective against left or right with that little screwball. Great control.
Burtsis worked an inning yesterday. Charlton worked 2. That's foul. Berryhill began the day hitting .308 and has hiked it a little bit, 1 for 1 with the sac fly. Franco worked 3 innings out of the bullpen yesterday, but threw only 36 pitches in total, and both he and his manager feel he could work an inning today if he had to. Dibble pitched 2 innings, and they'd come back to him for an inning if they had to today. Base hit for Berryhill, might be extra bases. Davis in the gap, Berryhill thinking double. Here's the play, close, and the ball skips away. He would have been called safe anyway.
Well, so often you think of Eric Davis as an offensive threat. Forgotten about his great running speed, curbed somewhat by the bad ankles and a hamstring, but boy, his throwing arm we've seen down through the years. In fact, we had one ball game where he threw out a couple of runners at third base a couple of years ago and one at second in the same game. It was an extraordinary talent. Berryhill really made that double going from home plate to first base. He ran hard all the way and cut the bag very, very sharply.
Smith bunts. It's going to work. Sabo on to first for the out, but a successful sacrifice.
Come on, Dan. Let's go.
So trying to build on a 4-1 lead. The Cubs have Berryhill at third, and Law coming to the plate with 1 out here in the 5th.
Well, Don Zimmer is Dodger trained. He played there for many years, and severe beatings, and this is the style of play that they learned in the Dodger organization. Branch Rickey built that organization on team speed. He figured if you could throw and run, we teach you how to hit a little bit. And that's the way it got to be known as Dodger baseball, and Zim's had to employ that this year. And the rest of the year, as long as these injuries, and even when Dawson gets back, they still don't have a lot of power.
Well, a hustling double, a sacrifice bunt, and they're knocking on the door again.
Don't forget about the squeeze. They
pitch out. Yep. Talking about even with Dawson lacking power, the Cubs hit 209 home runs in '87. Dawson leading the league with 49. Now, all of baseball fell off the following year, but the Cubs drop-off was really drastic, from 209 to 113. So the whole nature of their offense has changed.
Law's a good bunter.
Swinging away, base hit. It's 5-1 Cubbies. Oster probably would have fielded that ball with the infield back, but he had no chance.
No question. And what happens, too, is when you have the thought of the squeeze, either suicide or safety squeeze in your mind, you're going to get more fastballs. A breaking ball easier to bunt, and he goes behind after the pitch out 1-0. There's a fastball, and the late Charlie Law taught Van Saw an awful lot about situation hitting, and that was it. Fastball running away a sinker. Go the opposite way.
Dunston pops one back. Let's see if it stays in. Benzinger over from first to call Reed off and make the catch. That's the second out. Have the Cubs come through when it's mattered today? They're 5 for 7 with runners in scoring position, plus a couple of walks, a sacrifice bunt earlier in this inning, and a sacrifice fly in the first inning by Berryhill. Zim's got to be happy. His team in first and in front in this game, but something that would really put a smile on his face would be if Dunston could get going. He just isn't getting good hacks up there. A strike to Sutcliffe, who's walked and struck out. Law had 3 RBIs yesterday in a 10-8 Cub loss. Knocked one home with a single here. Harris takes the short route to Oster, and that finishes the last half of the 5th. But the Cubs tack on another one against Burtzes. A controversy here in Chicago. You see these folks are sitting in actual seats. A little bleacher section has been constructed atop some of the houses out on Waveland or Clark on either side. And the Cubs say they have no objection to the long-standing tradition of people having their friends and neighbors over and just gathering to watch the game from the rooftop. But when you start building seats and charging admission, the Cubs object to that. It's Griffey starting it in the 6th here, and Sutcliffe's ahead of him 0-2. And in fact, they've even suggested that if it doesn't stop, they'd build a screen that would block everyone's view from the rooftops. But that would be a last resort. It would be a bad PR move, and it would change the ambiance of the ballpark, and they really don't want to do that.
You mean like this press box already has? And these sky boxes?
Griffey goes down. I'm not sure I understand what you mean.
Change the ambience of the ballpark already.
This is the new press box, which provides more spacious working quarters for the radio, TV, and print people. That used to be the press box in that area. They've now become private sky boxes for which they can charge a substantial fee. Oster's first at-bat. He replaced Larkin, who was 1 for 2. In fairness, though, Tony, it does change the appearance of the park, these changes you've mentioned, but not drastically. And when you look out toward the field itself and the appearance of the wall and the boundaries of the ballpark is completely unaltered. Here's Grace unassisted to take care of Oster.
Sutcliffe and Berryhill have really mixed the pitches up. He's thrown some sinker balls. A couple innings before this, he was more with his slider and some fork balls. Started the ball game out with more fastballs. So if you're a hitter, by the time you get to the 3rd time to the plate, you think, well, we got this guy figured out. And yet Sutcliffe and Berryhill have mixed it up so much, such a variety of pitches, you can't sit on one thing. And with a Sutcliffe, he usually can throw the ball where he wants to.
Misses high and away to Davis. White Sox continue to lead Toronto. They're in the 8th at Exhibition Stadium. Days dwindling down to just a few for that ballpark. Soon they move into the new Sky Dome. In fact, we'll be there, Tony, for the game of the week in 2 weeks on the 10th of June at the new Sky Dome. White Sox 4, Toronto 3 in the 8th. Despite a home run by Fred McGriff, it's his 11th of the year for Toronto. The league leadership is shared by Bo Jackson and Rob Deere, each with 12, and the surprising Lou Whitaker has 11 for the Tigers. And McGriff now with his 11th today. Ernie Witt also homered his 4th. Breaking ball for a strike.
Yeah, Toronto's scheduled to be in the Sky Dome June 5th against Milwaukee, but it is far from done.
California, as we told you, rained out at Boston. Kansas City leading the Tigers 2-1 in the 5th. Tigers have played well for interim manager Dick Trzaskowski. Our best to Sparky Anderson, relaxing at home in California, trying to get his energy back. Vicious cut. And the count 2-2. California with Finley pitching so well last night, has 3 of the top 4 ERAs in the American League. McCaskill, Blyleven, and Finley are all in tremendous grooves for Doug Rader at this point. And they're right on the tail of the A's in the AL West. One of the big surprises of the season. Got him.
Whoa. He went to fastballs that time. Hard stuff to Eric Davis.
Second time he's fanned Davis. 6 strikeouts overall for Sutcliffe. As you mentioned, Tony, Don Zimmer is Dodger bred in Brooklyn and Los Angeles. Played, of course, with the Mets as well and with the Senators. And had tours of duty with both these clubs as a player. The Cubs and the Reds. Managed Texas and San Diego, in Boston, and now here in Chicago. So a lot of stickers on his bag.
You look at his records at Boston, he was something. Won 97, 99, 91. As soon as he dropped to 82 wins, they fired him.
But of course, he was at the helm in one of the unbelievable heartbreak seasons, and there have been many. A litany of woe for Red Sox fans, but he was there in '78. Liner by DeCenzo, gloved by Harris. So that's 1 out in the last half of the 6th. In fact, some years later, when Zimmer became a Yankee coach, he needed a place to live in the New York area, and he rented Bucky Dent's house in New Jersey. Bucky had since left the Yankees, but of course, Dent and Zimmer are linked in baseball lore. Zim was the manager of the Red Sox team that blew the big 14-game lead and eventually lost the 1-game playoff on Dent's homer off Torres at Fenway in '78. So Zimmer rents Dent's house, a strike to Varsho, and he finds that the basement walls are covered with pictures of Dent rounding the bases, shaking hands with his teammates, the trajectory of the ball over the wall for the game-winning homer. And Dent says to him, "Hey, Zim, how do you like my house?" He says, "Fine, except I took all those pictures, turned them upside down, and had them facing the wall the whole time I was there."
Blew the pennant might be a little bit of a strong word, because the Yankees rarely lost for a long, long stretch of time. They just seem to be unbeatable. They get everything in gear. They're hitting, their defense, have great pitching.
One and 2 to Varsho. Well, what happened that year, as you recall, the Red Sox really did cough up the lead, but then in the last 10 days or so, the Red Sox got hot themselves and won 7 or 8 in a row to force the playoff.
Eric can't outrun this one, can he? Boy,
sure he can.
The wind helped him. Boy, he limped over there, though, Bob, and the wind changed. It was blowing dead in from center, and that ball was hit pretty well, and the wind is now blowing unusually from right. It's starting to go out to left. A little bit of that summer breeze, and it blew it back to him, and you can see how he very gingerly is limping along toward right center. Got a wind shift. It's become a right-handed hitter's wind all of a sudden.
Couple of switch hitters in this inning. DeCenzo and Wilkerson have turned around to bat from the right side against Burtsis. Cubs lead 5-1 as they bat here in the 6th. Rio started, removed after 4 innings, giving way to Burtsis. Sutcliffe still in there for the Cubs. A strike, 3-1. Full count. Come on back, Curtis. Grace is on deck.
Well, outfielders really got to be alert here. I mean, within, seemed like a couple of pitches, a severe wind shift, and you've got the old trick. Keep throwing the grass in here to see which way the wind's blowing.
Oster, quick release, and that takes care of Wilkerson. Burtsis sets him down in order in the 6th. As the flag in tribute to Ernie Banks waves overhead. We're back after this from your local station. This telecast from Wrigley is presented by authority of Major League Baseball. It may not be reproduced or retransmitted in any form without the express written consent of Major League Baseball. Every seat in the House filled today, so apparently everybody got word about the change in starting time. This was to be one of only 2 scheduled Saturday night games this season at Wrigley Field. And NBC made the change. The network has the right to switch 4 games over the course of the season from day to night. Or from night to day, I should say, at their discretion. Here's O'Neill, first pitch swinging in the top half of the 7th, and Dunston throws him out from shortstop. So O'Neill is now 0 for 3. And the thinking on the part of NBC was the scheduled Pete Rose hearing before Bart Giamatti was to be Thursday, and this might be the first look at the Reds after that hearing. Obviously, the 30-day extension was granted. It became a moot point, and the game was moved from night to day, and the Cubs were very upset about it. They felt it was an inconvenience to their fans, and they issued a press release critical of NBC, and perhaps they had a valid point. They were very upset. Nonetheless, everybody found their way to the park for this one.
They signed the contract, so you abide by it if you can. You know, I was watching Sean Dunston on that last throw, and if he continues to hit so terribly as he has this year and the second half last year, you got to start wondering if a year or two they don't say, with that arm, Sean, with your futility, one of 2 things. Try switch hitting, and if you don't want that or if that doesn't work, why not be a pitcher?
What?
The guy throws the ball as hard as any infielder in the game, maybe ever.
Late stage, though, for a change, huh?
Was he 26, 25? Mid-20s is all he is. If he's not going to stay in the big leagues because he can't hit, and if somebody comes to replace him, or they tried to trade him apparently, and there wasn't a whole lot of interest the way he's started downhill, you want to stay in the bigs? Hey, Jeff Kunkel tried it. David Sullivan's kid, the catcher, tried it.
Scott Terry is an example of a guy who did it.
Outfielder.
Except he did it obviously much earlier in his career. He was not in the big leagues when he made the switch. 2-2 to Benzinger, who's 0 for 2.
Just some musings on my part.
Interesting ones at that. And what is it Mark Grace says down at first base? He says, when this guy unloads, all I do is go into a goalie stance and pray. As he throws it at me harder from shortstop than any pitcher we've got can deliver it to the batter.
You reinforce my thought.
Precisely, my man. Count holds full.
Kent Tekulve, the Ironman, boy, he is approaching the record for appearances by Hoyt Wilhelm for a career, and took Hoyt about 24 years. I think he's got about 40 games to go, right around that. And he's done it in about 15 or 16 years. Tekulve, 90 ball games or more 3 times in his career, 80 a bunch of times.
In the center field, DeCenzo over for the catch.
It's a tough break for Jerome Walton, who didn't spend a whole lot of time in AAA ball to come up with a torn hamstring, and got a good defensive feeling to send so far. But Walton, boy, he chases the ball down so well. He was hitting early on with an unusual open stance from the right side. I wonder how that'll set him back.
Dunston, for those of you who are wondering, is 26 and has not become the star that people predicted he would be. Not too late for it to happen, but also not too early to begin worrying about it. Here's the 1-0. 2-0 to Harris, who's grounded out and struck out. Sutcliffe has fanned 6, walked 1, allowed 3 hits, one of them a Sabo homer. He leads 5-1 with 2 out in the 7th. He didn't break it, he just lost it.
Didn't have the distance, as Rod Dibble did the other day. Terry Pendleton's bat. That's the story itself. Dibble's an interesting guy. We sat with him how long before the ball game today, and very down to earth. But when he puts the uniform on and gets charged up, his personality changes slightly, to say the least.
Sent Terry Pendleton's bat into orbit, almost over the screen behind the backstop, after allowing a key hit to Pendleton earlier this week in Cincinnati. And he said, as soon as I let it go, even before it reached the apex of its flight, I knew I had done something very stupid.
What would it cost him? $900 suspension, So he's making the minimum salary thereabouts. 2-day suspension, lost his 2 days salary.
2-out walk for Harris. And it'll bring up the catcher, Jeff Reed.
I think that's Dibble looking away. Always with the baseball man.
Yeah, that's him.
Has he got a great arm? Whew.
Well, what did he do? Early in the season, he got upset about an outing, and he went to an area behind the bullpen with some picnic tables, and he busted all the picnic tables apart, and then threw some of the chairs in a lake, which is one way to vent your frustration. And then he alienated some people by saying about Mike Schmidt, "I wish I could have faced him when he was in his prime so we'd be on even terms," which is rather brash for a rookie directed toward a future Hall of Famer. One incident, though, he sets the record straight on. People have said that he tossed the ball back at Chris James contemptuously after striking James of the Phillies out. He said that wasn't what happened. The ball was rolled back toward the mound, and he took it in his glove and tried to flip it back toward the mound after picking it up halfway between the plate and the mound, and the ball got stuck in the web and came out the wrong way and rolled toward James, and it wasn't what he meant.
Nice play by Berryhill. He just saved the base for Sutcliffe. Breaking ball down and in, and with those great hands and very, very strong, quick legs, just picked it out of the dirt like it was nothing. What a talent. You have to be careful here. Remember, they had Jody Davis, and Jody Davis seemed to catch 150 games a year, day baseball, in the heat of the summer. They'd like to not burn him out quite as much.
Tip back into Berryhill's glove, 1-2. Here's our first final of the day. White Sox got a run on the top of the ninth, padded the lead to 5-3, made it stand up to end their losing streak, and they win at Toronto. Cito Gaston now 7-4 as the Jays interim manager. Struck him out, and Sutcliffe is out of the seventh. Well, we've been talking about Rob Dibble, a future character of the game for sure. Here's somebody who's already made it into that pantheon of baseball. So, Tony, here's Rob Dibble's assessment of Rob Dibble. We know for sure he's going to be on Characters of the Game before longer. He'll join Bo Belinsky and the rest on that roster.
So he's a right-handed Al Roboski is what he's trying to tell us, huh?
A latter-day Mad Hungarian. This is Burtz's last inning of work for sure. Herm Winningham was in the on-deck circle, would have hit for him in the seventh, but the eighth hitter made the last out. Grace goes tumbling after hammering that one off his ankle or foot.
That down and in sinker ball from the left-hander, or a down and in slider from the right-hander, the one that gets you if you're a left-handed hitter. One thing you got to like about Grace, and we saw him last year, he does not bail left-handed pitchers. Got that slightly closed stance, really dive into the ball, but he's always going at the pitcher's release point, and he doesn't get fooled with that inside-out swing very much by left-handed pitchers, even their good breaking ball. I think Grace never going to develop into a 30 home run guy, but he can hit 15 to 20 in his ballpark. And hitting fifth, he can be a 100 RBI guy.
Hit only 7 homers last year, none of them in this park. He has 2 home runs this season.
That reaction, we're not sure, but with the Bulls trailing by so much at the half, you wonder if the reaction from a score that might have been heard where Michael Jordan perhaps has gotten the Bulls back in the ball game, which he usually does somehow.
The ball goes in the stands foul, and the bat picked up by Burtz's.
I'm sure, Bob, there are a lot of radios in this ballpark while they're watching this ball game, listening to Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls.
You know, that was another key move on the part of NBC. This game has changed from night to day, and then we wind up head-to-head against the Bulls and the Pistons. A complete washout.
Well, you got 2 first-place teams, the way it turned out. And
2-2.
Pete Rose stories was bubbling along.
And that was the thinking when the game was changed from a night game to a day game. And sometimes those decisions don't work out. You make them with the best information on hand at the time. Grace goes down looking.
Perfect pitch, down and away.
You got to figure a lot of people in Chicago have made extensive use of the remote control this afternoon, shuttling between the Cubs and the Bulls.
There it is, right on the black, as they say. The black border bordering home plate.
Berryhill pops one wide of first, and it's a souvenir. He's had a big day. Sacrifice fly, single for an RBI, and a double and a run scored his last time up.
Well, if there's one thing the Cubs have in their farm system, it's a load of catchers. We've heard about young Ty Griffin off the Olympic team. Moved from second to third base now at A baseball, but he's having a great offensive year, but they think maybe they'll have to move him out of the outfield eventually. But aside from that, they have great catching.
The crowd reaction is to the fact that the Bulls have come back after trailing by 11, and late in the fourth quarter they've come back and tied the game at 97 all, and we're told there are 9 seconds left in regulation.
If the Bulls got the ball, who do you think's going to have his hands on it?
A bouncing ball to second. Boy, what a difficult question.
just like he did with 4 seconds to go against Cleveland with guys all over him. And what did he do? Took 2 dribbles, got to the top of the key, hovered an infinitesimal amount of time, and dropped. This takes you back to your ABA basketball calling days, kid.
Well, Bertzis, after yielding a run as soon as he came in the 5th, has now retired 7 in a row. And he starts Smith with a strike. Smith has 2 singles and a sacrifice bunt.
Smith, who was such a disappointment in spring training, when Don Zimmer called him in to send him out, he said, the kid said, I deserve it. I've been lousy. Since he's come back up, he's shown traces of that speed and the bat that he has. Of course, we just saw him, unlike Mark Grace, bail out a lot. Bertzis delivery from the left side. Joe Altobelli sitting to the right of your screen, head of a bench coach, hitting instructor for Don Zimmer.
3-1, one-time manager of the year with the Giants, then goes over to Baltimore, and they've exploded here, so I can only guess
You know what
that the Bulls scored to either win or take the lead. The Bulls have apparently scored with 3 seconds to play. That's the word we're getting.
And there are over 30,000 people here, and everyone knows exactly what's going on in this ball game, but more importantly with the Bulls. Two-point lead with 3 seconds left for the Bulls.
That's it. And a 2-out walk here for Smith. You know, this reminds me of a Friday night at Fenway Park. We're watching the Red Sox play the Brewers, but the Celtics were involved in a playoff series against their then hated rival, the 76ers. And the Celtics, who were down 3-1, had won the 5th game at Boston Garden and were in the process of winning the 6th game in Philly. And the fans were going wild during low points in the baseball game. And then an extraordinary thing happened. Easy throw over to first as Law settles into the batter's box. Smith aboard with 2 out. 3 seconds to play in this game. An extraordinary thing happened. After the Celtics won that 6th game, the fans began chanting, Celtics, 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 a tribute to their basketball club in their baseball park. Then the clubs came back to Boston Garden for the 7th game, and Andrew Toney had a big afternoon, and the Sixers managed to win it and go on to the final against the Lakers. Folks, if you sneak over to catch the end of the basketball game, it would be understandable. But then come on back here. We'll still be here for a few more innings. 0-1.
Well, it'll be worth it because we got a chance to see Mitch Williams. Sutcliffe has not struggled, but he's thrown somewhat of a high pitch total.
Lance Law was under 200 about a week ago. He's been hot of late. Hiked his average about 40 points. Skies one to left. Ken Griffey's there. He's got it. And the fans aren't cheering that catch. I believe we've got a final now. Final score, Bulls 99, Pistons 97. They came from behind to do it, and they lead the series 2-1. Nothing but baseball now, folks. Stay with us. Michael Jordan hit the game winner with 3 seconds left. It gave him 46 for the day, and the Bulls over the Pistons 99-97. Sutcliffe moves to the 8th. Bob Costas with Tony Kubek. 5-1 Cubs. Herm Winningham pinch hitting for Burtsis is gone on one pitch. Dunston throwing him out. Cubs got 2 in the first, 2 in the third, another one in the 5th. Jose Rio could be on his way to his first defeat of the season. He came in 4-0, and the Cubs had, rather the Reds had won all 9 games he had started this year. Sutcliffe trying to take his record to 6-3. Faces Sabo. Sabo is all that stands between Sutcliffe and a shutout at this point. Launched his 3rd homer in the 3rd. Sutcliffe has thrown 1 complete game so far this year. He's 5 outs away from another one. At the moment, the Cub bullpen is quiet. One complete game in 9 starts to this point. This is his 10th start of the year for Sutcliffe.
The Reds, in their 26 wins this year, of those 26, they've come from behind in 14. 1 complete game for Sutcliffe, as you said. He's got a high pitch total. Mitch Williams did have terrible control problem last time out, hitting a couple of guys, walking 3.
Sabo,
look at the wind
driving Varsho to the track, and he's got it in front of the ivy. That ivy is in full bloom now. When we were here first week of the season, the walls were bare and the snow was falling, literally, in the game we broadcast against the Pirates.
The wind in Toronto can be very severe, or in Boston, but not like right here off Lake Michigan, where at times a 250-foot fly ball can end up being a 400-foot home run, and you just saw a weak pop-up go to the fence. And other times you can see, like Benzinger yesterday, a ball looked like 420. It stays in the ballpark about 330 feet away.
Griffey's 0 for 2 with a walk. He's got a younger son who he thought could have been a Major League Baseball player, just like Ken Griffey Jr., but the younger son preferred football and is going to be either a wide receiver or defensive back next year at Ohio State.
Says he's faster than either he was in his prime or Ken Jr.
Sutcliffe has struck out 7, walked 2, bearing down on win number 6.
He changes his pitching pattern throughout the course of a game so frequently. He's not throwing anything hard at this point, not for a strike anyway.
The count is 1-2 rather than 1-1. And that's strikeout number 8 for Sutcliffe on the 4th call to finish it in the top half of the 8th inning. It remains 5-1 Cubs.
The sensational shot. He goes glass with 3 seconds left. 17 of his 46 points in the 4th quarter. The Bulls over the Pistons by 2 to take a 2-1 lead in the best of 7. Back to Bob and Tony.
All right, Marv. Going for a doubleheader sweep of sorts in Chicago today, Bulls and Cubs. Here's Pete Rose. We were talking about all of his difficulties earlier, and it's sparked speculation about whether he'll still be a shoo-in for the Hall of Fame. And Bob Verdi, the highly regarded Chicago columnist, I think put it best. He said, for me not to vote for Pete Rose for the Hall of Fame, he'd have to be found guilty of a homicide. When you consider what he did catching Ty Cobb, here was Cobb at 4,192 career hits. You know what that is to catch him? That's 200 hits for 20 straight years, and then 193 more. Dunston swings and misses. Tekulve worked the third of an inning yesterday for the Reds. Part of their parade of pitchers in the 12-inning come-from-behind victory. Trailed 7-2, 110 on Rolando Room's homer. A shame for Calvin Schiraldi, because Schiraldi pitched 4 strong innings, striking out 5 for the Cubs. There's Pat Perry, former Red, former Cardinal, who's been very effective as a setup man in their bullpen. Schiraldi not available today after a 4-inning stint. He pitched well, but Rolando Room's ball got up in the wind and won the game for Cincinnati. Dunston goes after a pitch he had no chance of hitting squarely, and that's been a problem for him throughout his career.
Well, they didn't throw him strikes very often. And he helps out and gets himself out more than anybody else. It's Schiraldi, the bearded one, and Mitch Williams with the glove on his right hand. He's ready to go.
You know what Schiraldi did yesterday? He struck Barry Larkin out twice. The applause now for Sutcliffe. Struck Larkin out both times he faced him, and Larkin last year was the hardest man to fan in the major leagues. He struck out only once every 27 at-bats. And I asked Barry, what did he throw you? Did we go with the slider, something that fooled you? He said, nope, nothing but high gas.
This is Tekulve's 19th appearance of the year, so he needs 48 more appearances to get the all-time record. It's 1,070 appearances, games pitched. He already has the record for games in relief.
Two to Sutcliffe. Cubs batting in the last of the 8th. Wilhelm's record, 1,070 career appearances, starts and relieving combined. And Tekulve now at 1,032, I believe. 2 straight strikeouts here, so that would put him 38 behind tying Hoyt Wilhelm. 38 to tie him, 39 to pass him. The wind has shifted a little bit, but it's been changing throughout the day. Interesting thing about Wilhelm, of course, everyone thinks of him as a reliever, and that's where he built his Hall of Fame credentials. But he was a starting pitcher for a good portion of his career. New York Giants, later Baltimore Orioles, and once pitched a no-hitter for the Orioles in the late 50s against the Yankees.
Tekulve, who's happened over the last half-dozen years especially, has had more and more difficulty getting left-handed hitters out. At the time when he had a little more crispness to that slider, he could jam him.
Uses the full height to spear the comebacker, and he did his job. Holds the fort with a perfect 8, striking 2 out in the process. Last licks coming for Cincinnati. Oster, Davis, and O'Neill. Sharp ground ball that goes off the glove of Curtis Wilkerson at second base. And Oster is aboard to start the ninth.
Where's Brian Sandberg when you need him, huh? The guy rarely misses a ball. It looked like Curtis Wilkerson when the grass slowed it down so he could get a glove on and started breaking before he got to the ball. When he did that, he shuffled his feet. May have been able to get in front of him instead of backhand him.
Sandberg, who left the game early on after being hit in the back by a pitch in his only at-bat. Davis cuts and misses. Sandberg has won 6 Gold Gloves at second base. The record there is shared by Bill Mazeroski with 8. And Frank White, still active, with a crack at another one. He's won 8 for Kansas City. 1-1 to Davis. Sutcliffe leads 5-1. Reds batting top half of the 9th. Reds have won 9 of 12 and 4 in a row. Cubs have won 8 of their last 10. Reds in front by 2 over the Giants in the West as the day began. Cubs leading the Mets by a half in the East.
Well, you get Sean Dunston again at shortstop. He's playing about halfway, which really, he's playing less than double play depth with a slow infield for a guy who hits the ball as hard as Davis. I mean, that, you get yourself in trouble if Sutcliffe throws a sinker when it's not right at him. The ball's going to get by him. Playing too shallow again. Zimmer just can't seem to get more Chuck Collier to get him to play back with his throwing out.
As you said, Tony, Zim told us before the game he's always peering out from the dugout, repositioning Dunston.
He said he drifts. He said, I watch him all the time. He said, Collier watches him when he can, a former middle infielder. He said he'll roam around between pitches. The guy will foul the ball off. He won't go back to where he's supposed to be.
2-2 pitch coming from Sutcliffe to Davis. And it's out full.
And Zim's got enough worried about right now about the condition of Sutcliffe, when he should get somebody up in the bullpen.
Bullpen quiet for now. They'll give Sutcliffe a chance at going the distance. And here's a ball hit up in the air to left. Varsho going back. Varsho to the track, to the ivy, and watches it leave.
First 5 innings, that ball is held in by the wind. Typical bleacher bum. The ball comes right back out of the field, and the opposition hits a home run. That'll get the bullpen up in a hurry.
And that gets Mitch Williams up in a hurry in what suddenly would become a save situation. If he had started the 9th with a 5-1 lead, he wouldn't have been eligible for a save. That was only the 4th hit given up by Sutcliffe, but half of them are homers. Sabo and Davis. One of these 2 runs unearned, obviously, since Oster was aboard on an error.
Show you how wind plays tricks in this ballpark. Sabo's home run would have been out under any conditions today because it was a low line drive. But earlier on in the ball game, that ball would have stayed in the park that Davis just hit.
Sutcliffe easy play. And that's the first out of the 9th. Let's watch the pitch. A 3-2 pitch it was, just as Sabo's homer came on a full count.
Looked like it was bowled high inside part of the plate. 3-2, a slider that didn't slide. It just hung there. Rick is saying, where's the wind? And they had my favor the first few innings.
7th homer for Eric the Red. Benzinger's wearing an 0 for 3 collar as he steps in. Ball 1 to the switch hitter. The word on Barry Larkin. He has a bruised left cheek. He'll go to the hospital for precautionary x-rays. In there. Larkin was hit on the left side of his face, diving for a one-hopper off Mark Grace's bat in the 3rd inning. It went for an infield hit. Larkin left under his own power after being down for a while. There's another chance for Wilkerson. Room service hop. Sutcliffe is an out away. It's about to be a very satisfying day for these patrons. Many of them listened on the transistors and erupted when the Bulls came from behind and beat the Pistons. And now their Cubs are putting the finishing touches on this one. Could be their 9th win in 11 games. A strike to Lenny Harris, 0 for 2 with a walk.
A little extra with a fastball from Sutcliffe. Interesting how Sutcliffe is pitching with the lead he had. 3-2. He says, here it is, a hanging slider. Didn't mean it to hang to Davis. If it's a closer ball game, he's going to pitch around Eric Davis. Give him a little bit better stuff.
Slow ground ball, second base. Wilkerson has this one, and it's over. So an error and a homer to start the inning, but Sutcliffe then retires the next 3 in a row. He's 6-3. Jose Rio loses for the first time this year. He's 4-1. Both clubs will go to bed in first place.